Very good morning to all the students. Welcome to my online lecture series. Till now, we have covered different sessions on poetry. We have understood what is poem, the difference between the language of poetry and language of prose, and we have understood different types of poem: sonnet, lyric, elegy, ballad, and so on. Today's agenda will be doing today's session on essay. The essay is written by Robert Charles Benchley. We will see his life, then major works of Robert Benchley, his humorous style, then the introduction of the essay, Do Insect Think, and then we will analyze this essay. What will be our objectives from this session? So first of all, by the end of this session, we'll come to know the background and the life of Charles Benchley, his major works. We'll be doing introduction of the essay, Do Insect Think, and then we will analyze the essay. Let's see who was Robert Charles Benchley. He was born on 15th 1889 and he died in November 21st 1945. He was an American humorist, best known for his work as a newspaper columnist and film actor. From his beginning at Howard Lampoon while attending Howard University, through his many years writing essays and articles for Vanity Fair and New Yorker, and his acclaimed short films, Benchley's style of humor brought him respect and success during his life from his peers at Algonquin Round Table in New York City to contemporaries in the burgeoning film industry. His early life. Robert Benchley was born in Worcester, Massachusetts as the second son of Maria Joan and Charles Henry Benchley. They were North Irish, Protestant and Welsh descent, respectively, both from colonial stock. His brother Edmund was 13 years older. His father served in Union Army for 2 years during the Civil War and had 4 years in the Navy before settling again in Worcester, marrying and working as a town clerk. So this is all about Benchley's life and Benchley's initial career as a writer. Now, the death of Robert Benchley. Though Benchley had been a teetotaler in his youth, but in later life he started drinking with increased frequency, and eventually he was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. While he completed his year's work, his condition continued to deteriorate and he died in a New York hospital on November 21, 1945. His funeral was private and his body was cremated and interred in a family plot on the island of Nantucket. In 1960, Benchley was posthumously inducted into the Hollywood Walk of Fame with motion pictures start at 1724 Vine Street. This is all about Robert Benchley's life and his death and his initial years as a writer. Now, his style. which mainly is called humorous style. Benchlay's humor was molded during his time at Howard. While his skill as an orator were already known by classmates and friends, it was not until his work at the Lampoon that his style formed. The prominent style of humor were then Cracker Barrel, which rely on devices such as dialect and a disdain for formal education. Benchlay's reliance on pun and wordplay resonated more with the literary humorist, as shown by his success with New Yorker. Benchlay's definition of humor was simple: anything that makes people laugh. So this was his motto behind his humor. Now today's chapter. Do insect think? Actually, this essay is the reaction to Professor Bouvier's book entitled Life of Insect. Okay, in this book, Professor Bouvier says that we must be careful not to credit the little winged fellow with intelligence. When they behave in what seems like an intelligent manner, they may only be reacting. And here Benchley says, I would like to confront the professor with the instance of reasoning power on the part of insect, which cannot be explained away in such a manner. It means Professor Bouvier's book entitled The Life of Insect instigated or provoked Benchley to write his essay. When he read that Benchley says that we should not credit any intelligence to insect, it was a reaction of this statement that Robert Benchley wrote this essay. Essay start with the line, during the summer of 1899, while I was at work on my treatise, Do Larvae Laugh, we kept a female wasp at our cottage in the Adirondack. It really was more like a child of our own than a wasp, except that it looked more like a wasp than a child of our own. That was one of the ways we told the difference. So this paragraph is the starting paragraph or the opening paragraph of the essay, Do Insect Things. In this starting paragraph, Benchley says that it was summer 1899. He was working on his assignment and the title of the assignment was Do Larvae Laugh? Larvae is the initial stage of insect to become an insect. First egg, then larva, then insect. Okay. So he was working on this book and during that period he kept a wasp as a pet. So you can see the humor in these lines that wasp can be kept as a pet. And he says that wasp was like my child. Though he used to look like a wasp, but he was more like my child. See the humorous way, see the contrast in this line that it was like my child and it looks like wasp. Ki though appearance was like a wasp, but feelings was more like a child. The next paragraph, it was still a young wasp when we got it 13 or 14 years old. He is mentioning the age of the wasp, that the wasp was 13 or 14 years old. And for some time we could not get it to drink or eat, it was so shy. This word shy is the characteristic of a human being or a living being who behaves like a shy person. But here he is giving this quality to insect. That insect was shy to eat or drink because it was a female. Like female gender, they have this quality of being shy. So same way, since the wasp was a female in gender, it was a shy initially, and because of shyness it didn't drink or eat. My kids or my family decided to call it Maryam. The name of the wasp was kept Maryam, but soon the children nickname for it Pudge became a fixture, and a Pudge it was from that time on. So now you can see this chapter revolves around this Maryam or the Pudge. These are the two names given to this wasp, which was kept as a pet in the house of Robert Benchley, who was working on his assignment, Do Larvae Laugh. Okay, so here we have completed 2 paragraphs of this essay. Now, one evening I had been working late in my laboratory, fooling around with some gin and other chemicals, and in the living room I tripped over a 9 of diamond which someone left lying on the floor and knocked over my card catalog containing the names and address of all the larvae worth knowing in North America. The cards went everywhere. So this is the next paragraph where he says that one evening, it was very late, I was working in my laboratory, I was working with chemical and with some gin. This word gin is used in a symbolic manner. When a scientist is working in his laboratory, he avoids these intoxicating drink, liquor or vodka or gin, but here he has mentioned that he was fooling around with some gin or other chemical, and when he got tired, he got up from his chair, when he was going from laboratory to his bedroom to sleep. On the floor there were cards left, card of diamond. Okay, and because this card was slippery, I slipped and knocked my knee over those cards, and those cards on which the name of the larva was written, they were scattered everywhere. This was the mishap happened with me that night, that summer night, when I was going from laboratory to my bedroom to sleep, en route or in between there was a card of diamond which was lying on the floor, and I slipped on that card, and when I slipped on that card, those cards on which the name of the larvae was written, they were scattered. Now what happened? I was too tired to stop to pick them up that night, and I went sobbing to bed, just as mad as I could be. As I went, however, I noticed the wasp flying about in circles over the scattered cards. Maybe the Pudge will pick them up, I said, half laughing to myself, never thinking of one moment that such would be the case. So when those cards were scattered everywhere, I was thinking to pick them up, but I was too tired. I was too tired, and moreover I got hurt. So before I thought of picking them up, the second thought came in my mind to go and sleep because of tiredness, because of pain I got after getting hurt. So I went to my bed sobbing and try to sleep. But when I reached my bedroom, I noticed that the wasp, the pudge, it came flying there and started flying in circle. It started flying in circle over those scattered cards. And then the idea came in my mind that maybe the pudge is so caring that he will pick up these cards and keep them back. Though it was my imagination, but still that thought came in my mind and I said this thing to me laughingly, but I was never convinced that this thing will happen. So finally, till the time I went off to sleep, I could see the pudge was flying over those scattered cards. So, when I came down the next morning, that night I slept after having pain, after leaving things in scattered mode, I came down there in the next morning. So, next morning when I got up, and I went there to see those scattered cards, whether those cards were still there or they were picked up and kept them back by Pudge, but they were still there and Pudge was still asleep over in her box, evidently tired too. So I found that Pudge was sleeping in her box and it was looking as if she was very tired because previous night the Pudge was flying in circle and trying to pick up those cards. And well, she might have been, for there on the floor lay the cards scattered all about just as I left them the night before. The faithful little insect has buzzed about all night trying to come to some decision about pick them up and arranging them in catalog box. Then figuring out for herself that as she knew practically nothing about larvae of any sort except wasp larvae, she would probably make more a mess of rearranging them than as if she left them on the floor for me to fix. This is the end of the essay. There the writer or Robert Benchley is analyzing the situation of the previous night when this wasp found that the owner or the master of wasp got hurt and those cards were scattered on the floor. The whole night wasp must be thinking to pick up those cards and to keep them back at their place. But then wasp must have thought that she doesn't know anything written over these cards, which is the larvae, which is the name, how to fix. And then that wasp must have thought that even if he picks these cards and keep them back in the box, it may create more problem for the master, for Robert Benchley. So after thinking on these lines, she left those cards on the floor to be arranged by me. It was just too much for her to tackle, and to discourage, she went over and lay down in her box where she cried herself to sleep. And now the writer is thinking that I can feel the pain of the wasp when she could not do anything to help me out in my pain or to help me out in picking up these cards. Even I feel that this wasp, the Pudge, must have cried, and after crying she must have slept. So here he is convinced, the writer is convinced, the Robert Benchley is convinced that the wasp or the insect, they think, they feel like human being. Now, points to remember from this chapter or from this essay. In this essay, we see that author has used humor and satire. There are two words. One is humor. Humor is pure laugh, plain laugh. And satire is making a comment in a sarcastic manner, where you are telling something and you are meaning something else. Suppose I am teaching in my class and one student every day he comes late, and I make a statement, oh, welcome to my class. I didn't know that today you will be coming in time, otherwise I would have gifted you bouquet or flowers. So it means I am making a comment on him with the meaning of telling him that be in time, don't make repetitive mistake by coming late in my class. So this is satire, where you are telling something to expose something or to expose somebody's weaknesses. That is satire. So in this essay, the writer is using humor and satire. Second point, he personifies the wasp for humorous purpose. That in this essay we see that the wasp is personified. Wasp is presented as a human being with the human qualities, and the purpose of this is purely humorous. Benchley satirizes his message by using personification in a paragraph 5 when he described the way the wasp acted when it was unable to pick up the card and on the floor. So in paragraph 5 we see that he is using satire. It is already clear that these are actions a wasp normally would not do. Like whatever action the writer is telling or imagining, these are not the action to be done by insect or wasp, but he is using these actions to create humor and satire. It is just a way for the author to use his obvious humor to ridicule the scientist and their way of thinking in a similar situation. So he is here attacking the scientist for their experiments or for their use or for their thinking in a similar situation. So these are the important points which you have to remember: the humor and style, the personification, and how he puts those things in front of you. Now, I am giving you 3 questions from this chapter. First is, you have to write down what was the gender and likely age of the wasp. If you have listened to the session carefully, attentively, then it is an easy thing to write down the gender or the tentative age of that wasp. Second, what was the first and the final name of the wasp? I told you that in this chapter the writer has given 2 names to this wasp. And third, what did the card catalog which spilled over the floor contained? So you have to note down the description of card catalog which was spilled over. Okay, and those cards were picked up by whom, whether those were picked up by Robert Benchley or by the wasp. Now, for the next lecture, we will start short story. Short story as a literary form, the origin of short story, an element of short story. So here we come to this, the end of this session, and next session we will change from essay to short story. Have a great day, and I hope this session was a fruitful session for you. Thank you.